It's about to get really bad in the U.S.
I don't care about your religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says.
As Christians, we may all know someone that's gone to China or perhaps a part of the world that's hostile towards the gospel on a missions trip. Oftentimes, they're going undercover as an English teacher while really leading underground ministries. Sneaking in Bible while getting sniffed out by CCP agents is a common occurrence. Now, I know this sounds totally foreign to us in America, but what if the United States is actually a lot closer to these sorts of scenarios than we could imagine? But before we get into that, guys, my name is Ruslan. This channel exists to encourage, empower, and inspire you to live a life that blesses God. Now, why this topic is near to me is actually before me and my wife got married, she went on a month-long missions trip to China as an English teacher to actually help people learn about Jesus. So what can be happening and coming next in America, I think is important for us to examine. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I do find it interesting to pay attention to the signs of the times. Now, let's jump into this video. Okay, this is a fantastic clip from actually our church, Rhythm Church in Oceanside, California. If you're local, if you want to be local, pop in, say hello. This is my pastor, Pastor Jeff Moores, and this is actually one of my favorite talks that he's given. We're in a new series.
2022, a man by the name of Aaron Wren, he wrote an article. He wrote an article on the three worlds of evangelicalism, the three worlds of evangelicalism. And he would say that in everything up to about 1994 was known as the positive world, like how people viewed Christians.
This is before my time. I don't know nothing about no positive world of Christianity. There's always been hostility.
Yeah.
And he's specifically talking about evangelicals, neo-evangelicals. This is folks who believe that we are here to evangelize. We're not fundamentalists. We're not mainline Protestants, and we're not Orthodox or Catholics, right?
Yeah.
That's what evangelicals are. Maybe some overlap with like the Southern Baptists, overlaps with Pentecostals and charismatics, Reformed overlap. Neo-evangelicals, very broad community.
Society at large retains a mostly positive view of Christianity. To be known as a good church-going man remains part of being an upstanding citizen. Publicly being a Christian actually is a status enhancer. And then Christian moral...
I don't know when the last time being a Christian was a status enhancer.
That's kind of crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
norms are the basic moral norms of society. And violating them can actually bring negative consequences. Mm-hmm. This is also, too, where the church, we start to see the seeker movement rise up.
Uh-oh.
Now, from there, we move into what's known as the neutral world.
Okay, so real quick, seeker movement, seeker-friendly, you got a God-sized hole in your heart only Jesus can fill, and we are going to communicate to the lowest common denominator and make it as palatable as possible. Kind of what the seeker movement is.
Really?
Yeah.
Because everyone was already kind of warmed to the idea of religion and Jesus.
Yes. They didn't want their parents' faith. They wanted something cool.
Oh, gotcha.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Gotcha. So a little more edgy.
Now, this time within the history of Christianity actually reminds me of this clip from JFK when he was reacting to the Supreme Court ruling of the banning of teacher-led prayer.
Asked his opinion of the Supreme Court decision banning prayer in schools, the president says,
well, I haven't seen the measures in the Congress, and you'd have to make a determination of what the language was and what the effect it would have on the First Amendment. The Supreme Court has made a judgment. A good many people obviously will disagree with it. Others will agree with it. But I think that it is important for us, if we're going to maintain our constitutional principle, that we support Supreme Court decisions even when we may not agree with them. In addition, we have in this case a very easy remedy, and that is to pray ourselves. And I would think that it would be a welcome reminder to every American family that we can pray a good deal more at home, we can attend our churches with a good deal more fidelity, and we can make the true meaning of prayer much more important in the lives of all of our children.
Now, this clip is from 1962. JFK is literally telling the country to pray for their family, pray for their friends, and go to church. Okay, now let's jump back into the clip with Pastor Jeff.
View, and that's about 1994 to 2014, and this is where society takes a neutral stance towards Christianity. Christianity no longer has privileged status, but it's also not disfavored. Like, you're a Christian, oh good, okay, good for you, that's it. You know, I'll do my thing, and you do yours.
This is when I came to faith, was 1999, 2000-ish.
Okay.
And it was like, yeah, be a Christian, cool, man. Like, do your thing, you know? But it wasn't viewed as, like, positive. It was neither here nor there.
neither positive nor negative on your social status. Christianity is a valid option within a pluralistic public square. Christian moral norms retain some residual effect, meaning the culture still kind of lives by them. But it's in this time, this is where the church blows it, is the church, we don't talk publicly about the major cultural issues that the Bible has clear stances on because we don't want to turn anyone off the church.
Woo! In the time where things were neutral, we don't want to talk about any major cultural issues. Well, that reminds me of when Carl Lentz was on multiple broadcasts and they flat out asked him about homosexuality, about abortion, about those things, and he just wouldn't give them answers. Those are things we talk about privately. We don't talk about these things publicly. These are conversations we have in-house privately. You know?
Yeah.
We're afraid if we mention that from the stage, then maybe someone in there is going to be struggling with or just going through that, and all of a sudden they're not going to want to come to church, and so so what they would say is that we won't address it from the pulpit or the platform, but we will address it in private.
Yeah, I mean, he almost said that word for word.
He kind of was doing some research before this.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I remember this.
A little bit. Go ahead.
So then what they were doing is they were not discipling and teaching their congregations on what a real biblical worldview was. And they avoided and even downplayed major social issues like sexual morality, racial tensions. And in essence, the cultural engagement strategy of evangelicalism during this time was to take its cues from the culture.
Jeez.
Lot of mainstream music Christian remixes around this time. Yeah,
it's good. We move into games and gimmicks. See, we want to be like the culture. I want to dress like the culture. I want to make sure that I'm looking like, that's where like all of a sudden you see all these preachers starting to wear leather jackets and and slick their hair a certain way and whatever.
This man had one source for this whole sermon. It was Hillsong.
Hey man, ain't nothing wrong with a nice leather jacket.
Yeah. Hey,
I was wearing leather
PJ.
jackets. I was wearing leather jackets before Lentz. We probably even knew who Carl Lentz or any of those guys were. So.
But this is, just for context, this is what that produced. So this is the era where Gen Z was mainly formed and discipled. As a result.
That's dark. From a neutral.
Yeah. From a neutral, we're not going to say anything to ruffle any feathers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I would say I felt that.
Yeah.
Like being Gen Z, older Gen Z, like being raised, there's definitely a like, oh man, I hope I don't have to talk to a non-Christian.
Yeah. Why?
I think it was everything he's describing. I think there wasn't. I didn't live in a time where it was like positive to be Christian, and then growing up at the earliest stage, and then transitioning into the next stage that he talks about, and still growing up in that era. There was this idea that like, hey, like yes, these things are bad, but we don't talk about them because it's controversial.
Wow. That's crazy.
And so I was like, man, I hope I don't have to talk to a non-Christian, and they'll cancel me in my 60-second interaction. There's like a feeling of predicting conflict that I didn't want to be in.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
About 22% of Gen Z claims to be Christian. 22%. No, I mean, like that's down from like 40 to whatever it might be, like Gen X and so on and so forth. And some might go, man, that's actually still really good numbers. So 22% would claim to be Christian, but only 2% have a biblical worldview.
Jeez. 2%.
2%.
Yeah. I mean, they've done this study.
That's crazy.
70% of Americans claim to be Christian, but like a very small percentage actually go to church. Even smaller percentage actually have a biblical worldview.
So of those 22%, 20% would not say that this is what forms their worldview.
Okay, real quick, I need you to know about something that is going to expire October 11th, and I don't want you to miss it. As we come out of a tumultuous and divisive election season, it is my heart that we can be the hands and feet of Jesus and live a life that blesses God. And that is why we are having the first ever in-person Bless God Summit, the solution to the culture war. To not just be Christians who are reactionary to whatever is going on, but to live a better story and build better culture. And to be the solution to the culture war, I've brought in some of your favorite YouTubers, podcasters, speakers, and apologists to equip us by speaking at this 3-day event. This isn't going to be like the typical Christian conference, as we'll be doing something that is interactive, social, and giving us an opportunity to connect with each other and some of the speakers and performers. And this is all happening March 27th, 28th, and 29th at the beautiful Westin Spa and Resort in Carlsbad, California. The good news is we got the prices down to the bare bones to make sure that our day one supporters can get a bit of a discount so you can bring your whole family. Now, the bad news is this price is only available until October 11th. So don't miss the best time to get your tickets and go to blessgodsummit.com now. Now, this era, I think, is best illustrated from a few different clips from President Obama's presidency. Check this out.
My Christian faith, then, has been a sustaining force for me over these last few years. All the more so when Michelle and I hear our faith questioned from time to time. We are reminded that ultimately what matters is not what other people say about us, but whether we're being true to our conscience and true to our God. Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well.
Now, it's crazy to think about in our current society, such a bold proclamation of Christian faith of a president from either political party. But over the course of Obama's presidency, you start kind of seeing this all roads lead to heaven pluralism slowly start to creep in.
But I also know that Ramadan is a time of intense devotion and reflection, a time when Muslims fast during the day and perform Taraweeh prayers at night, reciting and listening to the entire Quran over the course of the month. These rituals remind us of the principles that we hold in common and Islam's role in advancing justice, progress, tolerance, and the dignity of all human beings.
And his pluralism begins to transition towards a harsher tone when it comes to Christianity in this clip that we're going to look at, with specifically how he paralleled ISIS.
Operating alongside those who seek to hijack religious for their own ends. Humanity's been grappling with these questions throughout human history. And lest we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
So over those three clips, you could see a transition happening from an accepted place to a pluralistic place to a bit of a hostile heart posture. And that leads us into this next era that Pastor Jeff is going to highlight here.
So now we live in a negative worldview, 2014 to present, where society has come to have a negative view of Christianity. Being known as a Christian is a social negative, but particularly in elite domain parts of society.
Yeah, so you're talking about like the institutions, you're talking about higher education, you're talking about higher levels of business, so on and so forth.
And then I'm 16 at this point, 2014.
Yeah.
So it was like growing up with the don't offend anybody to like now culturally this is bad. And it's like, oh man, you really feel that. No, I think there's no grit. You weren't raised with any like grit for the Christian faith.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. No grit. I wonder if this is shifting right now, like in real time. Is there a shift happening?
That'll be interesting. It does feel like it. So it'd be interesting to look back on it 10 years from now to be like, oh, if we were to do this again, what part would we be in?
Yeah.
Christian morality is expressively repudiated and seen as a threat to the public good and now the public moral order.
Oof.
Subscribing to Christian moral views or violating the secular moral order brings negative consequences.
Crazy.
This is where biblical truth is now winced at, even in the church.
Listen.
Where we will say a biblical truth and people go, ooh, I don't know if I agree with that.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Ain't that good?
Yeah. This reminds me, and this might be a little controversial.
Go ahead.
This reminds me of your Lecrae podcast. You know?
Yeah.
And then you're talking about like men, biblical views of men and biblical views of women. And just people being like, ooh, like.
I mean, Lecrae winced.
Yeah, and he's like, they're coming for you. But the comment section was like, there were some people that were extreme and like, yo, you're so. But like the general consensus was like, man, really love this podcast, but like it was kind of hard to hear some of Ruslan's takes on men and women. And it's like, why?
Why?
That's crazy.
That's good.
It's because you've been discipled by the world.
Oh!
It's because
you done been discipled by the world. The world, Craig.
Your mentor was your guidance counselor in public school.
Mentor was your guidance counselor. Biblical truth has never been convenient. Living God's ways has always been countercultural.
Wow.
It's always been swimming upstream. It's always came with trouble.
Yep. That's crazy.
I think we just had it too good in this country for far too long. You know, it's just like you like you're afraid to have conflict with non-Christians.
Yeah, exactly.
I live for it.
I know you do.
I will be so nice to people and love them in the moment. and then be unapologetic that I'm Christian, and then let them bring up a topic, and I will not back down.
You know what I have an irrational fear of, though?
What's that?
I have an irrational fear of forgetting everything that I know.
You just forget how to have a conversation.
I'm just like, oh man, the Gospels, forgetting every pro-life argument,
the Jesus, the resurrection,
forgetting every verse, forgetting every like apologetic ever. And it's like I know the things, but like it's an irrational fear that it comes up.
Yeah, that's good. And a negative view towards Christianity is one that we're all familiar with. Here's that viral video from a few years ago with Logan Paul pressing George Janko about Christianity.
What do I need a therapist for then?
Jesus isn't doing it for you, and I believe
what do I need a therapist for?
I don't believe you're as emotionally mature as you could be. I don't think that we have to condemn homosexuality. I don't think that we have to condemn before marriage. Or a slew of gluttony.
Don't condemn it.
I don't know if I can. I just don't know if I can get behind. Like that's silly to me. That seems silly to me. So I think it's a silly practice to engage in, and I think it deserves satire. Like, come on, bro.
Yeah, but that's not
subscribe to a doctrine that slams. Come on, bro. That's ridiculous.
And that was pretty brutal. And to be fair, Logan Paul did catch a lot of backlash because of that. But that was the reflection of a hostility and a negative view towards Christianity in our modern society. Now, most memorable to me, perhaps not the most viral, was this moment of a church crash out from Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks.
I don't care that you're a Christian. I don't care what the Bible says. Like, I feel like it's a clown show, like sitting here trying to decipher what your little mythical book has to say about these very real political issues, right? I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care. I don't believe in it. And I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
Well, that was tense. Let's jump back into Pastor Jeff.
TikTok is your teacher.
TikTok is your teacher.
Oh my goodness, he's got all these one-liners. I gotta pause it every 2 seconds.
He's cooking. He's cooking, man.
So we have no clear missiological strategy, meaning like how we should be doing church. And the cost of Jesus now goes up. It will cost you to be a Christ follower. It might cost you your job. It might cost you some friendships. It might cost you some relationships. Now the church as an institution is radically behind culture.
Oof.
And there's still, many churches are still operating like it's positive world. And many, I think I'd say the majority of the churches out there are still operating like it's a neutral world.
I talked to a ex-youth pastor at one of the biggest churches in America, one of the most influential churches in America. I'm not going to say their name. Anybody got a brain, you could piece it together. You want to follow me on Instagram, could piece it together. And he told me that they're so bad at talking about this stuff from the platform, anything even slightly related to this, that there are tons of people on staff that are full on like leftist brain all the way, pro-choice, pro-LGBTQ, and they're so, because the church never talks about any of these issues.
Like they would be shocked to find out that their church has that view standpoint.
Yeah, and this isn't one of those like the chosen hires non-Christians who have views that
this is a church.
That conflict. This is a church with people in ministry leading other people with non-biblical worldviews.
But we are in negative world. And I'd say this, while the church of institution is there, the church as a people, aka Christians, are more like the world.
Oof.
They have come to a place where, like Israel is at here in Malachi, their relationship with God is questionable.
No, that's really interesting.
In the world, but not of the world. That doesn't mean you water down what you believe.
Hello.
To which what you win them to is what you have to keep them at.
Yeah.
Right? So if you win them to this like mushy, soft faith where we just like accommodate the lowest common denominator, you got to keep giving them that.
I think one of the biggest unlocks is understanding that the Christian worldview is the logical worldview. It's actually easy to have these conversations, or it's simple to have these conversations.
Yep.
It's not easy. It's simple though.
Yeah. So I want to hear what you guys think. Do you think that there is a negative tension towards Christianity right now, or do we seem to be coming out of it? And if you want to see another clip where Pastor Jeff actually shows a hidden secret in the Bible that so many people gloss over, check this video out over here. All right? I'll see you over there. Peace.